Welcome back. Welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast, episode 5.1. This is a reactionary episode here because based on our last episode, we had a lot to talk about with Russell Wilson signing everything. However, something new came up and we are back to talk about it. Again, as you well know, Kenny Pickett is off to Philly. And again, which is basically breaking news right now. Guys, again, I'm not gonna go too much into the intro, to the monologue and everything. I want to get this going because again, this is top-notch news in the Steel City. I have with me Leanne Lohman and Bob Quinn, both senior staff writers for Steeler Nation. Guys, you doing okay?
Doing well, doing well.
Good.
Yep, absolutely. Surprised, but doing well.
Let's
Yeah,
get it
very
going.
surprised.
Let's get it going. Again, soon as Russell Wilson put ink to paper, it was reported that Kenny Pickett was displeased about the situation, and he wanted to move on. And GM Omar Khan sent him on his way. Guys, jump in. Now, last time I had Leanne go first. Bob, you go first this time.
Well, if you can believe what Aditi King Kabwala put out on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, after Adam Schefter reported that he preferred to move on, she was saying that he felt that he was essentially lied to by the organization, that it was supposed to be a quarterback competition, but he was told that Russell Wilson is the de facto starter. And it's a competition in the sense that if he plays terrible and you play great, maybe. I don't know how true that is. We do know that there were reports. I saw Andrew Filipponi was a guest with Nick Wright on his show yesterday, and he said there was real truth to last year when in Seattle when Kenny said, "Hey, I'm not being the third string emergency quarterback in dressing." So when you pair that incident with the potential incident of no matter who's right of saying, "Hey, I don't feel like I'm getting a fair deal here," you could see, okay, now the organization's starting to view him as a malcontent and shipping him out. I don't necessarily love the return, but if he's really discontented, I think we're seeing a pattern with Deontay Johnson gone, and now Kenny Pickett gone, and maybe they're trying to, or at least Omar Khan is trying for Mike Tomlin, and Tomlin could easily have a hand in this and saying, "Look, let's get the malcontents out. Let's, the volunteers, not hostages," is his famous Tomlinism. It could be addition by subtraction. I feel bad that Kenny's kind of got a raw deal here. I don't. He got paid. He got 25 starts. I mean, he could have maybe tried to overcome Canada, but unfortunately, the time's over. The hometown boy didn't make good. He and now he's on to another part of his career. And for his sake, let's hope a year or two behind Jalen Hurts, maybe he comes back as a viable starter down the road. What do you think, Leanne?
Yeah. I agree. I said the same thing as you yesterday, that Tomlin always says we want volunteers and not hostages. But for years, I feel like we've had players that we've dragged along by the collar that don't appear to want to be there. When it looks like the organization is bending over backwards to accommodate people and tolerate things that happen. And certainly the Steelers don't have the kind of behavior problems and the diva-ish stuff that other teams have. But, you just expect very little of that from Pittsburgh. So when you start hearing people are unhappy and they're stomping around the sidelines, I think particularly for Steelers fans, that's really hard to swallow. And it makes me wonder, first of all, this whole offseason has made me wonder what the hell Kevin Colbert was doing like the last decade. And then things like this really make me wonder, do you know what I mean? How much did he have a hand in keeping some of these players? You know what I mean? And how much is this like, hey, you said you wanted to go, so get out. You go to the worst team in the NFL in Carolina. Do you know what I mean? You could go sit your hometown team and back up somebody you'll never beat out, in Jalen Hurts. So I wonder how much Omar has a hand in that stuff. And like you, I feel bad for Kenny. Look, I say it all the time. I'm not pro Kenny. I'm not anti Kenny or Mason or anybody else. I'm pro Steelers. So whoever's winning games for us is who I want to see under center. I don't really care who that is. If you're winning games, that's who I want to see there. And Kenny did have a lot of hurdles put in his way. I don't think that the organization handled his development properly. I think he was given the short end of the stick with Matt Canada, especially keeping Canada into Pickett's second year, I think was a huge mistake. But by that same token, there were things that were going wrong that also fall solidly on Kenny that you can't fault anybody else for. And so I think as a professional, you see a lot of players have rough roads. I mean, look at all the things that Terry Bradshaw endured and hung in there. Do you know what I mean? Getting benched and everything else to stay in there to come back and be able to win Super Bowls. So I think that Pickett needed to show that he has the chutzpah to like overcome that stuff. And I don't know, I'm not a big fan of man children that throw temper tantrums and want to go somewhere else. I like you, it's addition by subtraction. I'd rather let them go.
It's Bob, when I thought about, what Kenny said, he didn't want to be third string. It did kind of remind me going back to what Bradshaw said, back in his day. And so I believe now that the Steelers front office and Tomlin, I believe they've grown a pair now. They got, and I'm talking about a pair of grapefruits. So, and that's good. I mean, granted, the organization, they care about their players. The city loves the players, but it cannot be a case of the inmates run the asylum. There cannot, it can't, no, we can't have that. So with that being said, with Kenny, hey, I wish him the best. And let's face it, it's not like he was playing lights out where he had the chance to start, because let's face it, if you watch that, the Arizona game before he got hurt, there were so many just incomplete passes that he threw, and potential passes that he just missed targets.
I think he looked good in the first half of the Arizona game. He had a couple of nice passes to Pickens and Deontay. Just a quick story about Terry Bradshaw, because everybody brings him up about the Pickett thing. So if you ever get a chance to watch, and it hurts as a Steeler fan to say this, but if you watch the Al Davis Football Life documentary, he tells a great story about tells a great story about Bradshaw. Bradshaw begged, according to Al Davis, begged him for a trade in '74 when he was sitting on the bench at the beginning of the season. Said, please do anything, get me out of here. And Al Davis said, look, I got Stabler, I got LaMonica, I don't have any room for you, but I will put in a good word for you. And his story goes, he went to Chuck Noll, who they were friends, and said, hey, put Bradshaw in, he can win for you. He's the best quarterback you got on the roster. So football was very different then. Players couldn't come out and demand a trade like they do now, and they couldn't move on after 4 or 5 years like they can now with the rookie salary cap. Based on that story, I wonder if Bradshaw had been playing today, if it was Chuck Nolan, he was yanking him in and out of the lineup. If Bradshaw wouldn't have said, hey, I'm the first overall draft pick, you don't want me, get me out of here. Somebody else will. So, I mean, it's hard to compare those eras. Now, if Kenny really was, and I can say that I think he would be understandably and in some cases justifiably upset. You want me to be the third emergency quarterback? Well, yeah, we need a third emergency quarterback. Should he have suited up? Absolutely. Now, if he had it, now bear in mind, he went through the quarterback competition in 2022, where by the end of the Seattle preseason game, Mason Rudolph was out of the competition, even though he didn't do anything to justify that he should have been out of it. He was playing well. He may have looked at it and said, hey, I see the tea leaves here. I was always ahead of Mason and behind Mitch in name only until it was just a matter of when am I going in. And now I'm behind Russell and I'm getting a competition in name only. Maybe he just had it, and in a moment of, just human nature, said, I don't want
Yeah.
this. I don't want to do this. I want to go somewhere where I have a chance. He he has no chance to beat out Jalen Hurts.
Mm-mm.
And he could, Jalen Hurts, if he's healthy, is a top 5 quarterback. But he was hurt a lot last year.
I was going to
And
say
they
he's
didn't
injury prone.
Yeah, they didn't feel like they could go to the backup. So maybe they're getting Kenny to hedge their bets and say, you know what, this guy, we won't look good doing it, but we'll win 3 or 4 games with him if we have to sit Jalen Hurts down for a month and let him heal.
I think that's fair. I think we've all also been in that position as grown-ups where you just know a situation isn't good for you anymore. Do you know what I mean? And if that's where Pickett felt he was, and it just wasn't a good situation for him anymore, then I respect the decision to just kind of move on. Do you know what I mean? I don't harbor any ill will against the guy. I'm not upset about how he left or that he left or any of those things. Do you know what I mean? I hope it's not because he feels like he owed something. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's very few people in the NFL who are owed anything. You know what I mean? Maybe you're TJ Watt, but even TJ Watt has to continue to perform at this high level to, be able to have this spot. If all of a sudden he couldn't play anymore, they're not just going to put him in because he's TJ Watt. So I think that, there's a balance that with that in the NFL where you have to perform at a level to deserve something. So I hope it isn't because he felt like he was owed something because he was a first round pick. Because frankly, if he was in another draft class, he may not have been.
Yeah, I don't think he would have been at all. I mean, you look at that class now. I mean, Sam Howell traded to
Yeah.
Seattle. I think he has a chance to beat out Geno Smith, and probably the best chance of the 3 guys who got traded. Desmond Ridder, Kyler Murray does get hurt, so he will get an opportunity, but he's not going to beat out Kyler Murray.
No.
And I just can't see Kenny beating out Jalen Hurts unless something happens, Hurts gets injured, Kenny goes in, he plays well, then maybe you get kind of that Philly before, where, okay, this backup may be a little better than the starter. I mean, Hurts was a 2nd-round pick, but what he showed in the Super Bowl 2 years ago was that he has the potential to be an elite level quarterback. He slid back tremendously in last year, but it was obviously because of injury. So, Kenny's got to play his cards right now. He's got to be a good citizen. He's got to, he could still have a future in the NFL. I don't think it's just as a career backup. I mean, he was getting killed on the talk shows yesterday saying he's a diva and everything else.
I don't think all of that.
Yeah, I just think he was.
I think he's got a shot. If he performs well, maybe some other team will pick him up. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that gives him the opportunity to shine. It's sort of like what I'm hoping happens for Mason in Tennessee. You know what I mean? There's an opportunity for him to show that this wasn't like a 3-game fluke. So maybe Pickett can show with a strong offensive coordinator that he really can do something.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's Pickett's problem, I believe. He's not really consistent in my book. Because again, if he was playing lights out, this wouldn't be a discussion right now. But I believe that, maybe a little arrogance come into play because, you're the quarterback. And I mean, again, this is like the front office turned over a new leaf now. It's a new day in Pittsburgh. And, doggone it, I like it so far. I like it. I mean, we're talking about extreme makeover in the Steel City. Again, Patrick Queen signed, Deshaun Elliott signed, Russell Wilson signed all yesterday. Of course, they gave Mike Tomlin his like a birthday gift, and I saw the pictures on social media. So, which is great. And but guys, I mean, and they're not done. They're not done. I saw where they signed Van Jefferson, 1st-round 2020 draft pick, to a 1-year deal. They finally addressed the wide receiver situation. Great.
Well, I mean, I think he was
he's
a
a depth
2nd-round
piece.
pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a depth piece.
I mean, he's at best a wide receiver 3. And picking up on your point, Ray, let's hope that it's a new day because right now we have Russell Wilson and nobody else at quarterback. We have Pickens, Austin, and Van Jefferson, who I don't think anybody believes is truly the number 2 or the number 3. I mean, there's got to be more coming. And by the time it shakes out, he's probably the fourth or fifth receiver.
He was a
on the
second round
roster.
pick. Second
Yeah.
round. Yeah.
But think
Yeah,
but think about this. Canada's gone. You know, now Arthur Smith is in as OC. So we're talking about revamping the whole entire offense.
Well,
Start
they've
clean slate.
yeah, they've got it. You know, this opens the door for him to bring in Tannehill as an emergency, Ryan Tannehill as an emergency policy. He's a free agent. They probably won't cost too much. He'll cost a lot more than Russell Wilson. But he's still relatively, I mean, I think he's expected to be in that $5 to $10 million range.
He's going to cost the
Justin-
Steelers a lot more than Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is costing a lot of money. We're just not footing the bill.
Right,
Good
exactly.
point.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing is, you know, the Justin Fields trade is back on the table because nobody is interested. And if the Steelers do it, they have to decline his option right off the bat.
Yeah.
And Fields has got to be at this point, and you would think he would be on board with this. Look, I can either back up a rookie in Caleb Williams, or I can go be the backup for Russell Wilson. Maybe learn something, but the NFL
Yeah.
won't judge me too harshly if I sit behind Russell Wilson for a year and then sign a mid-level, you know, not the 25 million you would have been guaranteed with the fifth year option, or I think it might even be closer to 30. You know, maybe give him a 2-year deal for what his option would have been. And if he's willing to take it, being that you don't have Russell Wilson under contract, if he plays very well and he prices himself out of your market, you've got the future in Justin Fields. I also think, you know, now a mid-round quarterback should be in play. There's rumors Drake May is falling. I don't know that with the needs at center and everything else, if you can really pull that off. I mean, if you can, you should. But then if you get Drake May, then it's really just a countdown until he gets on the field.
Yeah.
Jordan Travis from FSU is a very intriguing prospect. He is only in the fourth round or third round or fifth round, depending on which mock you look at, because of his injury. If he was not injured, he'd be late first, early second. We'd be talking about him ahead of guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix. That's an interesting prospect that the Steelers could get. Let him get healthy, sit a year, kind of like the Lions did with Hendon Hooker, although I don't think they'll overdraft him like the Lions did. Right. That's a guy who could be very interesting for the Steelers.
One other article I read was a tweet, and this is just rumor right now, that the Steelers are looking at another wide receiver, and that's Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. So he may come to Pittsburgh. And again, you know, I think it's because of a salary cap situation. I believe that Deebo is wanting more money. And I understand. I mean, look what he's done. But like I said, Deebo, he's a solid guy. I like him. He's very solid, very consistent in his play, hard worker. And I would like to see him in the black and gold, you know. And again, right now, like I said, the Steelers right now, they are just being so aggressive just doing this free agency. And again, I can't wait till the draft. I just can't wait because again, it is so much, how should I put it? The way they're doing things right now, Lynn and Bob, it's like, okay, we're playing a guessing game. Who are they going to draft first? Who are they going to draft second? You know, things like that. So again, to trade Kenny Pickett for, you know, a 6th round pick, you know, of course he gave up a pick. I think with a third round pick. Yeah, 120.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, that's fine.
Yeah, they got the 98th pick. They moved up from 120 to 98.
Okay. Oh gosh.
And just one thing, Ray, I think Deebo just signed a new contract last year. I think Deebo was more rumored last year than this year. The 49ers wide receiver who's very unhappy is Brandon Ayuk,
right?
Which I think that's the guy. I don't think the Steelers would be able to pull off a trade for him, but if they could, he's a 1A. It would be a tremendous deal. The 49ers seem pretty committed to Deebo. They gave him $70 million. I can't see them dumping him after 1 year. And,
I don't see the Steelers paying him that either, even if he wanted to come to Pittsburgh. We're not meeting that right now.
yeah, 25 million for a 29-year-old wide receiver, I think is a little bit of a stretch. But we just got rid of Deontay Johnson, who was very publicly unhappy. And now Debo never quit on plays, but Debo was pretty vocally unhappy all of last year until he got his contract. I mean, at the end of the season, last season, I mean, he did all the tricks, deleted the social media. No way I'm coming back to San Francisco. You got to pay me like a running back and a wide receiver. And then a running back quickly disappeared from that conversation once he realized they don't get paid either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I would love Ayuk. I mean, don't get me. I mean, yes, Debo would be awesome to have in Pittsburgh. I just don't know how realistic that is.
The one thing that I've seen with the new players that we've signed, and I haven't heard Van Jefferson talk yet. So Russell Wilson, Patrick Queen, and Deshaun Elliott have all said the same thing. They've all said why they're here is because they want to play for Mike Tomlin. They want to play for Pittsburgh, the history, the tradition, the winning ways of the team, that, it means something to be a Steeler. Do you know what I mean? It's that they've all said that same thing. And so it makes me wonder if some of the frustrations that have been vocalized from Deontay Johnson and Kenny Pickett, if some of those things have led for them to really look at guys that get that Steeler way. They don't want to keep having that conversation about how the Steeler way is dead.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was
exactly.
that was a big discussion also, that the Steeler way, because I know Ben, he discussed that on his podcast about the Steeler way. Right now, I believe this is the new Steeler way. So it's very aggressive.
But
try to win now.
I wrote about this a little bit yesterday with Deshaun Elliott and him coming out and saying, hey, if you don't want to be physical, get off the field.
Yeah.
The Steelers defense, as good as TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Minka are, and they're great. They're top 10 defensive players at their positions in the league, and TJ's the best defensive player on the planet. None of them plays with a nasty edge, and that's something the Steelers have been missing for a long time. I mean, Troy had a little bit of a nasty edge to him. Harrison did, but they kind of phased him out his last couple of years.
Yeah.
You can say that the playoff drought almost directly corresponds to, the lack of villains on the defense. And I think Patrick Queen has villain in him. He dirty hit on Kenny in his rookie year, where he grabbed his face mask and drove his head into the ground in the first Ravens game that Kenny played and knocked him out of the game. Elliott cracked. I mean, personally, I don't know how the league didn't suspend him, or how Patrick Mahomes didn't have to come out for a play when he literally cracked his helmet open with a hit.
Yeah. He said he has that helmet. He kept it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, those are, and Elliott was already embracing, like, hey, I'm physical and I'm going to hit you hard. And that's what I really love, that element next to Minka, because he is going to go do the dirty work in the run game. Minka's going to put his head in there, but he's not physical like Elliott is. I mean, he's trying to be, he's playing like it, but I think it was out of necessity. Puts Minka back in center field. Queen, Elliott, now you pair them with the edge rushing. Really excited to see what the defense looks like.
Yeah. I appreciate that we took a little bit of an aggressive stance on picking up some defensive players. I've heard a lot of people complaining on Twitter and social media about, our problems are on offense. We already have this high paid defense, but we also had some issues on defense, and they needed to be addressed. And I think I appreciate that we're not spending another year pretending to put a Band-Aid on this inside linebacker problem. So.
Absolutely. Hopefully, knock on wood, Patrick Queen solves that problems for years to come. And, I don't think we're done. I mean, I like Landon Roberts as the thumper next to him, but I think they should still be looking for another young guy to put next to Queen. Let's, get a guy on a rookie deal and and let those two be the middle for years. And I think if a Landon Roberts is your number 3, then you have a great linebacking
Yeah.
crew. If he's your number 2, okay, you're probably pretty good. If he's your number 1, you got a problem. And I think Omar Khan recognized that.
And
yeah, and I think we'll get somebody in the draft, but we're not as like urgent as we were. Do you know what I mean? But now we can drop back a few rounds.
We don't know the extent of Cole Holcomb's injury as well at this point right now.
Right.
I
think we have to assume. I think we have to assume that. I mean, all reports are coming out that injury could linger into 24. Hopefully, he makes a full recovery because he's a good back. But it's also his career trajectory. If he does miss time, this will be the 3rd year in a row that he's missed significant time due to injury.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, guys, we had to talk about this. We had to discuss.
Absolutely.
Yes. Any final words?
Like, share, subscribe.
Leanne?
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe.
There you go. And if you have any questions or comments, please email us at 6steelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXCITYRINGS@yahoo.com. Leanne, Bob, thank you very much for coming back on doing episode 5.1.
Thanks, Ray.
We'll be back next week. Take care.
Yes.